Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hey, everyone. Everybody get some snow?
I think so. Hard not to.
I got about 2 to 3 inches out here in the middle between Sonora and Columbia. So, but,
Yeah, pretty icy this morning.
oh yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's not 2 o'clock. Is anybody else glad it's not 2 o'clock? Yeah.
If it was 2 o'clock, I would have slept in an extraordinary amount.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Ed.
Morning, Ed.
Morning, Ed.
Good morning.
And Ed, you said Lisa is out sick?
I don't believe so. Melissa was out sick toward the last week, and Lisa filled in publishing the board package. But Melissa is well and back in the office, working. And I believe Lisa is well and working as well.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah, it was just the end of last week. Melissa was under the weather.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning, Eddie.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm having trouble with my video today. It's not turning on.
All right, Lisa, I had problems with my entire internet this morning. I had to reset and reboot.
Yeah, I'm just happy we have electricity.
Good morning, directors. This is Melissa, and I'm just making sure that everybody is logged in. I'm just double checking with Corey, and we can get started here in just a second.
I think I'm going to pop off for a second and back in and see if that takes care of the video.
I see Don Perkins here twice on our participants.
Good morning.
Hey, Don.
See me twice. I have both of my.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No, no worries.
There's a whole bunch of us here. We can mute.
It doesn't look like Lisa made it back in.
Here she is. She's just popped on.
Yeah, looks like the video is not going to work for me today.
Okay.
Okay, with everybody back in, President Balin, would you like to go ahead and start the meeting?
Sure. Okay, I would like to call Tuesday, January 26, 2001's meeting to order beginning at 9 a.m. or thereabouts. And let me see if we can perhaps put ourselves on mute. And David Boatwright, Director Boatwright, would you like to lead us in the play?
Certainly, President Balin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands for, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. I do that right? I'm not
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you. I'm sorry I caught you off guard, Director Boatwright, but you did really well. Go get some water. Okay, great. All righty, so we've called it to order. We've said the pledge, and I'd like to open it up to public forum for all our public. And we would like to welcome the members of the public who have, Melissa, did you say something?
I'm sorry, President Balin. I was just going to do the verbal roll call.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
We'll have to unmute.
Director Balin,
Here.
Director Boatwright,
Here.
Director Kearns,
Here.
Director Murphy,
Here.
Director Regan.
Here.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa. And as a reminder, I might need to put that in at the beginning so that we do our roll call before we do the public forum. So I'll try to remember next time. Thanks. Okay, we would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. So at this time, Corey, is there any member of the public that would like to address the board?
Not at this time that is being indicated, no.
Okay, thank you. Then I will close off the public comment. And Melissa, will you please read the first for the consent calendar, please?
Absolutely. Item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of January 12th, 2021. And I also received a correction to the minutes, and that was made this morning. And it was on item number 7. The correction was just in the order of the motion. And so I corrected it so that Director Murphy's motion was stated in the minutes first and Director Regan's motion was stated second. That was the only correction, no wording correction, just the order of the motions. So that was corrected in the minutes this morning. And item number 2 is reject claim for damages, claim number 20-04, Philip Ferreira, claimant.
Thank you, Melissa. Ed, I see your hand up before we go further.
Yes, President Balin, if it pleasures your board, I do make a request for a motion from the board to move the legislative advocacy prior to the Sierra Pines agenda item. We have guests that are online and out of professional courtesy. We'd like to take care of them first so they don't have to stick around for the Sierra Pines item.
I didn't catch all of that, but I think I caught, would it be better to put them, as soon as we deal with the consent calendar, we put them first? Is that where you were going?
Yes, they would be the first on regular business.
Okay, great. Does any board member have an issue with that? All right, seeing none, then they will be first on regular business. Thanks. Okay, back to Melissa. Melissa, I'd like to thank you for that, making that correction. Is there any board member that would like to pull one of those 2 items? I actually would pull item on the minutes. I would like to pull the minutes. And I just have a brief correction for the minutes. Melissa, for item 5, to just add, and I can give you this language, it would just be Director Balin requested that the current project title be the same as the original project title, and to remove the word recycling as it was not in the original CEQA project title. And I know you crossed out the word recycling, but it just needed to be kind of tethered or grounded or anchored in the reason why. And so I would be glad to just give you that language. And I'm asking if any other board director objects to that, adding that language to clarify that action. Okay, seeing none, then Melissa, would you like me to send you that or repeat it?
If you can just email that to me, that would be wonderful, Barbara. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a little clarifying thing there. That's all I had for the minutes. All right, Corey, is there any, before we pass those, well, we didn't really pull any item, did we? Well, I pulled the minutes. Okay, so is there any public comment on that, Corey?
Not that's being indicated, no. And also just to remind everybody, if there is going to be public comment, if you'd like to speak, please digitally raise your hand within the Zoom app, or do a star, I believe it was a star 6 to digitally raise your hand if you're on landline. But if you're on the Zoom, please digitally raise your hand by clicking more and then raise hand. And that way we could pick you up that way. But at this time, there is no public comment.
Thank you. Then I'll close the public comment and call for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Director Ringer makes the motion. Looks like Director Boatwright, you second, correct?
I'll second it.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor. Oh, Melissa, would you like to do a roll call on this?
Yes. Okay, approving the consent calendar, I'll call for a roll call vote. Director Balin,
I consent.
Director Boatwright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Regan.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. All right, going to regular business, and we moved our guests to the first spot. Melissa, would you like to read the item, please? Well, that's okay. We're going to consider the contract extension for legislative advocacy services. Ed, would you like to introduce this, please?
Yes, happy to do so. Thank you, President Balin, members of the board, staff members, and any community members that are online. I'm excited about this opportunity for our two state and federal legislative advocates. The reason why is that the board authorized the first of a one-year contract back in 2019 for the 2020 calendar year. We worked very closely, both the board, staff, and VNF Solutions and California Advocates to look at state and federal priorities. And during the course of 2020, met with good success, both in securing much needed federal grant and very low interest loan dollars for the Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility, which is moving forward, as well as other strategic priorities such as the Pinecrest 401 water quality certification. There were many others, as well as just educational opportunities for the board and staff as we went through calendar year 2020. As everyone had a chance to meet our legislative advocates at the last board meeting. They provided brief presentations. There was a brief Q&A. They're back here this morning as your board considers acting on extending the contract for calendar year 2021. As the staff report indicates, there's a number of strategic priorities in the hopper for 2021 that we're excited about. And I believe these two teams have demonstrated their value to TUD and its ratepayers. And it's with staff's recommendation that your board approve the extension for calendar year 2021. They're here online to be able to answer any further questions your board may have, and I'll be available as well if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And welcome, Anthony. We missed you last time, so I'm glad you could make it this time and be here in case the board has any questions. So with that, are there any further discussion on this item with the board? Okay. All right. Well, Corey, is there any public comment?
Not that I see at this moment, no.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, if there's no further discussion, looks like you guys covered it all at last meeting. So is there a motion here?
I'll make the motion to approve the recommended action.
Okay, thank you, Director Kearns. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Director Boatwright. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, then I will call for a vote. Melissa?
Roll call vote.
Yes, all
Director
those in favor. I'm sorry, all those in favor of to approve a one-year contract extension to VNF Solutions, California Advocates for the 2021 calendar year. Okay, yes, please call for the vote.
Okay, roll call vote. Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatwright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
One clarification on that. I was actually muted. One of the other directors actually seconded the motion. I did raise my hand on the video, but like I said, I was muted at the time.
Thank you, Director Boatwright. All right, well, that concludes that item, and we thank you for showing up and being on hand in case we had some questions, and we appreciate your good work.
Thank you very much. We look forward to working with you in the coming year.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Melissa, our next item then.
Okay, and this would be numbered as item number 3 under regular business, and it's a public hearing to consider adoption of a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act for Sierra Pines Regional Water Treatment Facility.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay.
good morning, President Balin, Vice President Ringen, and members of the board. This is Eric Johnson, District Engineer. What you have before you today is exactly as Melissa described. It is a carryover from our December 8th board meeting when the board heard a presentation and directed staff to return at a later time after you folks had had a little more opportunity to digest the document. It is a pretty large document. Our intention today is not to rehash everything that we went over on December 8th. Dawn and I have supplemented some information. So we'll go through the PowerPoint rather briefly and quickly and pause and contemplate a few slides that we've added. The PowerPoint is in your agenda packet as well. So you probably have had advance preview of that. I do want to introduce one more time Dave Beauchamp with ESA and Maria Hensel with ESA. They're here to answer any questions. They are the authors of the environmental document. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Please feel free to interrupt and ask questions as we go. But like I said, I'm going to go pretty quick through this. Let me see, make sure that you guys can see this here in a second. All right. Just one moment here. I want to. Okay, can everyone see the slide presentation? Okay, great. All right. Well, you know, briefly on the history, this project dates back approximately 12 years. And with increased activity in the last few years with the formal adoption by the board of the Treated Water System Optimization Plan, which is just a fancy way of saying a consolidation plan, master plan, if you will. And then we've done preliminary design for Sierra Pines. We've done a wetland delineation. And then in early, or I should say late 2019, hard to believe it's already 2021, we undertook the beginning work on the environmental review that you now have before you. Just to recap, the purpose of the project is to consolidate 9 surface water treatment plants. 7 of those could be accommodated in phase 1 of the project. The phase 1 is all that's covered in the environmental review that we're considering today. It would also enable us to position for consolidating and serving other private mutual water companies, of which there are many in the area and in close proximity to our existing service area. And as you'll hear from Dawn a little later, there are many storage tanks and pumping facilities the district currently operates and maintains that would be able to be consolidated with a regional treatment facility at Sierra Pines. Reliability, sustainability, economy of scale, and higher quality raw water are other project objectives. What we have here is a map of our service area. The blue is our water systems, and the shaded area just reflects the service area boundary that could be served by a Sierra Pines. And there are stars there indicating where some of the treatment facilities are. The gray shaded stars are the 2 treatment facilities that would be in a future phase. They aren't anticipated, that is Monte Grande and Tuolumne City aren't anticipated for consolidation for at least probably 20, 30 or more years into the future. Those facilities are in a very good condition right now. I will kind of step through this with Dawn and share some photos of the treatment facilities, and we can discuss their condition and some of the issues that we have with those. Dawn, you just let me know. I'll go ahead and steer the ship here. So you tell me when you want to advance or not.
Sure. So this first treatment plant is up in the high country, Cedar Ridge. Original construction around the late 70s and early 80s. Like many of these treatment facilities we're considering to consolidate, they were constructed at a time long before any of the real pertinent surface water treatment rules were in place. So they do struggle to, although we do well with our operators and operating the systems, they do struggle to meet all of the regulatory requirements without careful operation. So this is Cedar Ridge. And this is also in the high country, Crystal Falls, you know, up in above Comstock there. This one, some of us refer to this treatment plant as the Upper Basin Treatment Plant. A few years ago, retitled to the Lakewood Treatment Plant because it sits in Lakewood Park. But in a larger region, we call this the Upper Basin Zone, where all of these treatment plant facilities reside. So this is the Lakewood Treatment Plant, again, up in the high country in the snow country. Yeah, this is Ponderosa. This is further down the hill on the Eureka, towards the middle to end of the Eureka Ditch system. Again, late 70s construction and designed. It's ill-equipped really to treat water to today's standards without very careful operations. So we do a good job there, but that plant is very, very dilapidated, and at its end of its useful life, it's beyond its useful life. It will struggle to, by itself, continue to serve downstream users from there.
Hey, Don, I got a question.
Sure.
That Ponderosa plant there, any idea approximately how many connections that one serves?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's
Just ballpark.
yeah, it's several hundred. Besides Ponderosa, it feeds down to the Tuolumne Band of Miwok tribe, the reservation. Yeah, and you know, they have plans to grow in their community too. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so nervous about that treatment plant's future.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Thank you.
You're welcome. This treatment plant is all the way on the other side, much farther to the north. This is the Scenic View treatment plant. I think it's way down where that far left black star is. I can see on my screen there. That's an approximate location of that treatment plant. Again, it's real old technology. It works fine, but that Clearwell storage tank there is a real Achilles heel for that tank, for that plant. It's severely undersized to meet chlorine contact time. It's severely old. It needs to be replaced if we're going to keep the plant. That sedimentation basin, it's fallen apart. It works there, that lower picture there, but it struggles. And this one is our groundwater system, the Phoenix Lake Park groundwater system. It is a well system only, serves about 60 customers or so. It's highly dependent on pumping facilities. It's all electrical and everything's pumped there. Yeah, and we do actually filter the water there. We remove iron and manganese from the water at this treatment site. And you can see, I guess, from that picture that that tank there is in very poor condition. If we're going to keep this treatment plant for very much longer, we're going to have to replace it.
One more question, Don. On that Phoenix, that one there, yeah. So that feeds about 60 customers, and it's groundwater service. So you've got to pressurize that system then, don't you?
Yeah, so we have what's not pictured is it's hard for me to describe this, but there's 3 different pumping facilities or places where we need electricity. We actually pump from the well, which is near the lake, up to this treatment plant several hundred feet away, and I don't know how many feet high, but yeah, so we pump there. We use pumps to drive the water through the filtration process, and then in that little tin shed next to the storage tank is a hydropneumatic station where we provide a hydropneumatic pressure for all of those people. None of that is gravity.
Yeah. So if we were to go ahead and build the new treatment plant at Sierra Pines, that would eliminate the gravity problem, I assume.
Absolutely. In fact, that rings true with just about everything we're talking about. But yes, that would eliminate this. It would turn us all gravity down Phoenix Lake Road from the Ridgewood area. Correct.
So water that's being pumped 3 different times now wouldn't be pumped at all.
Not only wouldn't be pumped at all, it wouldn't be treated at all. It could be treated by 1 person versus 2 people.
Right. Thank you.
Right.
I have a question, Don. Just kind of get it in my head. When it in the report, it said for this phase that these certain treatment plants would be abandoned. But would we continue storing treated water at those facilities, however?
Yeah, that's a great question, Barbara, and that's something that we need to really carefully consider along the way. Although we could, if we were to put this pipeline down, let's just talk about Ridgewood, down Phoenix Lake Road to intertie the Scenic View and the Phoenix Lake water treatment plant, I don't think we'd completely mothball those treatment facilities or those storage tanks. We just need to be very careful about and consider those impacts to our annual ditch outage and canal outage. The idea in my mind, Director Balin and board members and community, is we need to strategically relocate storage facilities on this side of the reservoir, whether that's raw water for treatment or treated water tanks, versus having so many tiny little ones in specific locations. If that was clear enough, Barbara.
Okay, I'm having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know if it's possible for you to direct your voice towards the microphone.
I'll try. Is everybody having?
Okay, that's better.
But now you can see my face closer.
So if I understand you correctly, Don, the goal would really be to have the tanks still online, you know, just because we need as much storage as we can get on this side of our conveyance. Do I understand that right?
Yes, Barbara, you're correct. But to be a little bit more clear for me, I mean the same amount of volume of stored water versus the same amount of tanks, if you follow my logic there. So currently we're sitting at, I want to say 70 storage facilities all over our system. And that is down from about 88, 15 years ago. So we've done a good job of consolidating some of our reservoirs and building larger tanks more strategically located. Well, that's the same theme I think we should continue to follow here, is to have a finite amount of stored water on this side of the flume as we do today.
And to elaborate on that a little bit, President Balin, the Phoenix Lake Park, that tank in particular would be an example of one that would go away, because that storage the only way it would be usable is if it was pumped. And so we would definitely eliminate that storage tank. And like Don said, we would reduce the number of tanks, but we would try to maintain the same storage volume or more.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. That was good. Director Ringen.
Thank you. So, Don, back quite a few years ago, when we were talking about this originally, one of the issues was the cost and so on, in order to put the proper size pipes to the various areas. And I really haven't heard anybody up to this point really address that. I mean, it looks like we're forging ahead with building the main facility, the treatment plant. But I'm concerned about, once it's up and ready to run, are we going to be able to get the water where we need it to go? I mean, I know that, like, we have replaced, we meaning TUD, and this is back quite some time ago, put new pipeline past Brentwood, I believe it was. And unfortunately, we didn't think ahead, and it's undersized. So I'm just wondering how this is all going to fit in. I mean, we're talking, which I think is great. I mean, I've been supportive of this project right from the very beginning. But I'm just concerned that we're going to end up with something that we can't get the water to where we want it to go without spending a fortune. And I'm hoping that staff and everyone has got this figured out.
Mr. Ringen, I absolutely appreciate this conversation and this question and this dialogue, because it's so vitally important to me and all of us that work here at TUD and our customers. So if I understand, your question was, okay, so once we get the treatment plant, so what? How do we get it where we need it, right? So
correct.
Currently on this 5-year CIP that we're working on, we have a couple of projects outlined to do just that. Now, funding it might be a bit of a question, but one of those projects in the very near future, like next summer, we plan on beginning to work, based on passing this document, that is, we plan on working on a project to bring water down from Ridgewood, the upper basin zone, which would consolidate both the Scenic View and the Phoenix Lake Park water system. So that's one transmission line we're working on right now. We also have on our CIP a proposed project, to bring water down Mount Provo Road from the Confidence area to tie into the Ponderosa system. That's, again, it's in concept design. It needs further design, and we need to find a way to fund it. And then thirdly, Eric Johnson and his crews are working on a way to quickly intertie, Crystal Falls and Cedar Ridge, pretty quickly. So the thoughts are there, the concepts are there. We need to fund it for sure, though.
And Vice President Ringen, that's a great question. We're going to touch on the costs because I know you brought up the costs. I'll piggyback on what Don said. The Techite line, which the board approved a construction agreement for late last year, and that project, that first phase of that project is done. It was sized to take water from Sierra Pines back through Crystal Falls and over to Cedar Ridge. So it was thought through that way. This environmental document that the board is considering today includes 2 pipeline segments that are critical for consolidation. So I maybe didn't make that clear. It seems very focused on Sierra Pines itself, but it includes a transmission main segment on Middle Camp Road and some cross country, as well as the pipeline Don referenced coming from Ridgewood down Phoenix Lake Road, which is in our capital program. So we are really thinking about transmission mains so that we don't have a treatment facility that can't deliver water to all the areas we need.
Great.
Question, Eric. Do we already have the acquisition of the easements necessary for some of these transmission lines? You just mentioned some that are going cross country or off roadways.
Yes. That's another great question. We do. That's been confirmed. The segment down Phoenix Lake Road and down Ridgewood's in public right of way, so we didn't need an easement. We have an easement for the cross-country section running from Middle Camp over to just below the Comstock tank. I know this doesn't mean a lot to those folks that are listening, but we do have the easements secured to proceed with construction. I think that the larger challenge is the board adopting how we adopt our budget and whether the funds will be available to proceed with the pipeline construction. But either way, some of these pipelines will have value if they're constructed now, and the Sierra Pines treatment facility isn't constructed for many years. We just need to make sure things that are put in the ground are sized for the eventual use, because pipelines have such a long life versus a treatment facility. We've broken it into 3 phases, a 3 MGD, 4 MGD, 5 MGD. We do not want to do that with pipelines. We don't want to put another pipeline in the road. We want to size it up the first time.
Okay, question for Don. It's a sideline thing that can get pushed back to the wastewater committee or whatnot. When we take the Phoenix Park water treatment facility offline, the backwash water will no longer go to the sewer. I'm just wondering if the iron and manganese backwash is beneficial or detrimental to the wastewater treatment system. Are we going to be lacking another nutrient factor for biologicals? But anyway, like I said, that's a pretty big tangent in the opposite direction.
Thank you. About right. Yeah, I get that question, and you and I were the perfect people to kind of hash that out in our committee meeting, which I'm looking forward to getting started.
Okay.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, this next slide the board has seen before the whole purpose of showing this slide is just to kind of reiterate the economy of scale that we would achieve by consolidating. Don referenced staff needs with multiple treatment facilities. We obviously have people assigned to those. If we had a regional treatment facility at Sierra Pines, we would be able to reduce our unit cost for treating per million gallons. And it's kind of important to note that O&M costs and labor in particular really drive the district's budget. Steve could speak more to this, but I think on our water O&M budget, labor is somewhere in that 50%. And I may be a little off there, but the key takeaway here is that labor is a big driver, and O&M can be reduced, not just labor, but electricity and pumping and chemicals and everything that goes into water treatment by consolidating the facilities. This is a lot to digest here, a lot going on. Maybe I'll let Dawn kind of run through this. We can go into detail or we can kind of stay high level, but we did want to point out some of the challenges that are immediate with these treatment facilities, and to emphasize that if we don't move forward with consolidation, we're going to have to do something to resolve many, if not all of these issues at the existing facilities as they currently are.
Yeah, this is a busy slide. We developed that slide. Sorry, Eric. We developed that slide a few years ago during our studies, and I don't want to go into each and every one of those unless somebody has some specific questions. But earlier on, I mentioned that none of these treatment plants are really designed for some of the more recent and very restrictive water quality requirements that we're faced today. Number two, it says cannot achieve 4-log removal of cryptosporidium. Well, if we couldn't spell cryptosporidium in 1978, now it's on the forefront of our minds. It's a nasty bug that can be in our waterways, and we have to have that kind of removal. Number 8, TTHMs, which stands for trihalomethanes, and HA5s, haloacidic acids, exceedants. Again, those are all byproducts of regulations that came down before these treatment or after these treatment plants were built. And so you do one thing and it causes another to go high. And so we're constantly on that battle. And I don't see water quality regulations loosening up, only becoming more and more strict. So I just think it's the right thing to do. All those other reasons are on there for sure, especially, I'm not sure where it is on there, but we have a problem with our backwash water. We can't properly dispose of our backwash water in many of those sites. So we just have some issues out there, and it's just high time, in my mind, that we consolidate, build a modern treatment plant with all the facilities necessary to produce potable water. Another example of what is a problem, Eric Hall and his ditch crews, and he had to borrow some crews from other staff members early yesterday morning, and worked through the night last night to get water in the ditches flowing to the treatment plants. In this way, this sort of diminishes that need to put people in harm's way, walking at the middle of the night and inside the ditch, floating snow. This will eliminate a large part of that. So there's many, many reasons for us needing to do this, and this table is just some of them.
Vice President Ring, go ahead.
Yeah, Ron has a question.
Okay, I'm sure staff has thought this out completely, but with that many treatment plants being consolidated, which just makes me almost giddy, are we going to have more than enough raw water storage available for even down the long range future up there at the Sierra Pines water treatment plant? Because that would seem to me might be the Achilles heel of, because now there will be no water production below. Once those 9 go away, they go away. So if they're going to be getting this treated water, then are we going to have enough raw water there on site that will get us through whatever happens with growth here in the county and everything else?
Another great question, Mr. Ringen. I don't know if Eric and I want to tag team this, but maybe Eric can speak to the volume of stored water on this side of the flume. But yeah, all of that is necessary and important. In my estimation, having in excess of 20 acre feet of new stored water, of raw water on this side of the flume, more than handles all of the foreseeable needs that I can see, especially during that week-long ditch outage. That's been thought of carefully. You're right. We've hashed this out, and I'm willing and ready to hash this out some more, because it's one of those areas where we just can't make a mistake. I feel really confident in our plan and our approach. I'm not sure if Eric wants to comment on the raw water storage part of this.
I'll just say, I agree with what Don said, 20 acre feet. We've been trying to achieve 30 acre feet on site at Sierra Pines. It's represented in this CEQA document as a 30 acre foot reservoir. It does have some environmental challenges that, from a permitting perspective, it could result in a decrease. So any decrease, let's say, in raw water storage has to be made up in treated water storage. The cost to have raw water storage is much less per unit, so that's our goal. But right now it's a 30 acre foot reservoir, and it may need to get a little smaller, but hopefully we'll be able to maintain at least 20 acre feet on site.
Eric, will that help regulate or maintain ditch flows throughout the system?
I don't think it will. Yes, the answer is yes. Upstream of that, there's a response time. So if the treatment plant needed to go into a backwash and it was running directly off the ditch, or demand increased and it was running directly off the ditch, the ditch is going to have to respond to the treatment plant. In this case, we'll have a fairly consistent flow rate feeding the raw water reservoir, and the plant will be able to ramp up and down as needed and do its backwash, and the ditch won't have to see those surges and those pulses in flow. I can't say exactly, without Eric Hall here, and how PG&E responds, how tightly we'll be able to operate the system, but it will be easier to operate.
Because the critical needs will be handled in the treatment plant.
Correct.
And the irrigation customers don't need to be as picky. So in other words, we'll still be able to get fire flow if we had to around the county with our raw water system, if we utilize that water for fire protection.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, we'll move into the financial side of things here. And this is, very important. It was an added slide because the board obviously expressed some concern about this project. The environmental didn't speak to the financial side. However, I can say the treated water system optimization plan looked at quite a few different alternatives, and it came up with some bookends. And the one bookend, I should say, is what we call minimum consolidation. And we felt it was important to look at what would it be if we just reconstructed all of the 13, and when I say 13, I mean our whole district, we have 13 surface water treatment plants, how much would it cost, capital and then O&M, to just reconstruct those? Now, many of the sites don't have space, so we would have to acquire land, hopefully adjacent or very close by, build a new facility, and then mothball or demolish the old one. There'd be, instead of, 4 different locations in terms of doing construction, there'd be 13 different individual construction sites, which involves all the environmental and permitting for each of those sites. When we looked at the net present value of over 40 years of doing that, and then we looked at building consolidated plants at Sierra Pines, also a new plant for Sonora, Big Hill and Columbia would remain. If we were to go back and look at our service area map, you'd see those 2 outliers. They're remote. They're very difficult due to topography to get water over there. It would be very expensive to deliver water and to pump water up to those locations. So we feel those 2 treatment facilities will probably always be in the district's inventory. We will need to maintain them and rebuild them when they reach the end of their useful life or regulations necessitate. So the one bookend of 13 had a capital cost, and then our preferred regional alternative, which is these 4 plants that you can see there, it was a pretty neutral capital comparison. And that may be surprising, building 13 small plants versus having 4 other plants. But the reason is what Vice President Ringen pointed out, is you need to have transmission mains that connect all of these systems. And those aren't exactly inexpensive. So we factored in the cost of the transmission mains with the preferred regional alternative, and it brought up the capital cost to being very much neutral with the minimum consolidation. Where we really yield a benefit is in the O&M cost. And as you can see there, the 40-year O&M cost, we're saving, close to $60 million if we consolidate. And that is based on staffing, electricity, all of the chemicals that are used at the plant, all of the maintenance, and based on historically what we've spent to maintain our existing plants. The economy of scale graph that was displayed earlier also speaks to this. And so you can see the cost benefit of consolidation really on the O&M side. The table below gives you an idea of how many plants could be the 9 that could be consolidated with Sierra Pines. And then I want to point out number 5 and number 9 show up in what I would call phase 2 or 3, really many years into the future, and they're not part of the CEQA analysis for this. But the other plants, we would be spending that capital up front for Sierra Pines to consolidate those. If we did minimum consolidation, there are some ways we could Band-Aid and defer costs, and we considered that in our capital cost analysis and in our O&M cost analysis. So we did consider phasing. The minimum consolidation is not really it's not an option to do nothing. So I do want everyone to understand, if we didn't move forward with consolidation, we will by default be proceeding on a path that's similar to what's represented in the minimum consolidation. Vice President Ringen, your question?
Yes, you're talking about phasing and the plan moving out in time, which is good. I mean, everybody's thinking ahead, making sure we don't trip and fall flat on our face. But how is this going to fit in with? I mean, we've got a bunch of very good, talented employees. How is this going to fit in as we consolidate and eliminate 9 water treatment plants? There's going to be some people that are not going to be needed. Is this being worked in also phasing with retirements and things like that, so that we're not abandoning people? Because that always hurts.
Ron, thank you again. Thank you for the insightful questioning. And I think I know you know the answer, and you're throwing this up there for the general public's consumption. And yes, that's one of the very tricky things that we managers have been trying to contemplate as we think about these consolidations, the timing of these consolidations, and the needs of the district and how they'll change and focus, and how we blend that in with upcoming retirements. And so we are in the middle of doing that just now, trying to carefully thread that needle, I guess, so to speak, of, you know, how do we efficiently adjust staff to meet the changing needs of the district based on plant consolidation. So yes, we are actively working on that and have been for many years now.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, then I think we'll get into the mitigated negative declaration and the CEQA aspects that are really the heart of this agenda item. We just wanted to give the board a little more background on the project need and some of the finances. We knew that at the last board meeting that was questioned. So, but at this point, I'd like to reintroduce the board to the site layout and the raw water pond that you can see at the bottom of the screen. That is representing about 30 acre-feet of storage. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because we've looked at this before. Unless there are any questions, please go ahead and stop me at any time. The CEQA process itself, we followed state law and went ahead, went through, did our site surveys and made sure we captured the spring bloom. We consulted with SHPO, also did our AB 52 required Native American Tribal Resources notification. We did not receive any comments back in any consultation with that. We did prepare and circulate the IS-MND, which is Initial Study Mitigated Negative Declaration, for 30 days. During that time frame, we held a public meeting in the heart of COVID, but we did it outside in a socially distanced fashion with 2 separate sessions on site. It was fairly well attended. You can see a photo there of the first session. At that time, we presented the site layout and conceptual site layout that you saw at the previous slide. And we received a total of 30 comments. And then we went ahead and prepared responses to those and made a slight modification to the mitigation monitoring reporting program, and then agendized it for a public hearing at your December 9th board meeting at such time that, we were directed to bring it back, and we're here today. Some of and Dave and or Maria, please chime in if there's something that I'm missing here, but to rehash the predominant CEQA and underlined non-CEQA issues that were reflected in the comments were aesthetics, noise, recreation, transportation, traffic, wildfire, and fire protection, siting, and design. I think some of those interact with each other. Obviously, recreation is connected to noise, connected to wildfire risk, and that kind of thing. The siting and design, having that raw water reservoir right there in some people's backyards. It will have a pump station. That was a concern. The noise associated with the pump station was a concern. We did talk about lighting at the last board meeting on this. But in general, I think the board's probably had an opportunity to look at the document and the responses to comments, and I'm happy to, open it up if there's some questions or some things that require other discussion.
Hey, Eric, this is Dave Beauchamp with ESA. Yeah, I think you did cover that. We are available to answer any of those questions. Aesthetics, we can just run down this real quick and maybe add some information. Excuse me. On aesthetics, it was, public comments were related to the siting. As Eric had noted before, these things are all somewhat tied together. It just had to do with where the buildings are being proposed and set back at the Sierra Pine site. Noise largely related to construction activities, but some connected to where the raw water pump station would be located at the raw water storage pond. And so we've addressed that. There's and probably will look to relocate that if that's still, I believe that's part of what's being contemplated now. Recreation, there's the trails that and other public facilities that were contemplated and analyzed in the environmental document, and everything is still in a proposed framed up as proposed, based on funding, based on need, based on being able to accommodate the public that way. And then transportation traffic, mostly related to construction activities, but some with the recreation. It just depends on probably more about time of the year with that. And obviously there's a concern always with the wildfire and fire protection and being able to make sure that the facility is protected, that there's fire protection around there. The good thing about it, you've got a water treatment plant that actually is going to be able to serve for fire protection and will be widely available there for the surrounding community. And I think that's about it. There's permitting aspects and things that are kind of in motion now following the consideration and adoption of this CEQA document. Anything else? Any questions? Just wanted to kind of clarify a few things there.
Ron has a comment.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of concerns. I've been reeling through that book that Dave and his organization put together, and it's
Ron, you've seen nothing.
Well, that's been quite a chore for me. So at any rate, the CEQA, in the CEQA, it says that it does not cover everything for the complete project. And does that mean we're going to have to come back for another second bite at the apple for other portions of this project? Because that would seem kind of messy to me.
So if I understand your question, are you talking about the phasing?
No, you have a comment that I believe it was you that actually put in there, and it basically says not everything for complete project is included in CEQA.
So there's a couple of things. We did not analyze in the CEQA document the demolition of the treatment plants that would be consolidated as part of this project, because that may or may not need to occur. It just depends on what TUD wants to do with those facilities in the future. So that was a cost savings. It just doesn't make sense to do something just to do it. In terms of phasing, the phase 2 and phase 3, there could be additional environmental. It just doesn't, we don't know yet. It's too far out. It's based on demand. Phase 2, because it's really a re-rating of systems, probably will not require any future CEQA. Phase 3, which would have some additional equipment and storage, and I think processes, included into it. Eric, you can correct me on, or give me the technical terms on that. It's going to be based on demand, and if the demand in the county in 40 years from now doesn't reach that, you wouldn't need to increase that, and hence there would not be future CEQA needed. Let me give you a little bit more. If we analyzed up to 5 million gallons, then you're basically kind of putting out something that says that could be growth inducing, could be perceived by the public as a growth inducing type of facility that, oh, we're going to size this thing, we're going to build it to 5 million, even though we don't have a demand. And that would be another CEQA, sort of a CEQA no-no to do. And that would have caused actually much more probably public comment on this. This is being sized, and it's right sized to accommodate the consolidation and to meet the existing needs of the system for TUD. Does that answer your question, Ron?
Yeah, I understand now exactly where you were going with this. Ever since I was involved in the original discussion of this consolidation and of this large treatment plant at Sierra Pines. And it's always been sort of a dream of mine that that one treatment plant would gravity feed the entire TUD system, in which case then that wouldn't be growth inducing. That would be just smart, advanced thinking. And the only thing that held back that idea for the most part, well, first of all, was many years ago that I was hoping for that. But it was the cost of the pipe, how to get the pipe in the ground and to all the different areas so that it would be a complete gravity feed, single source situation. So I guess was sort of in the back of my head when I was asking that question.
I have a question. Thank you, Director Ringen. That was enlightening. A question for you, Dave. The pipe that's recommended in the first phase, but I don't think it was analyzed through the CEQA, but it's in this report, and I think it's on it's table 5.2, and it shows the pipe, the initial connecting pipe, and it talks about upgrading existing pipe, and then it talks about some new pipe, and it talks about, I think, a 14-inch pipe upgrading from I forget what smaller size pipe. So are you saying that is wouldn't be considered growth inducing, that would be to just upgrade the facility for water reliability?
That is correct. Exactly. You need, because of the increased volume that would be coming out of Sierra Pines, you need more reliable and larger capacity to meet the downstream demands, in addition to fire flow and fire suppression purposes. So, and to meet peak demand and peak flows and everything. So it is a reliability, and it's also public safety.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question, and I believe, Eric, maybe you can answer this, but where I have concerns, I mean, I don't have concerns about the concept of consolidation. It's that we will be putting some of the pipelines in transmission lines in our, let's say, our CIP, but yet the board, or at least myself, I'm not really clear unless I really see the CEQA analysis on the effects of these transmission lines in the whole scheme of things. I mean, we've got great CEQA here on the actual footprint of the treatment plant. You guys did a really outstanding job on making sure that the public was involved, et cetera. But I get concerned with some of these construction of various off-site distribution systems that are not the subject of this environmental document. Would we then be getting an environmental document that has the pipelines then in it and the CEQA analysis on their potential impacts? I'm not talking about the ones in the roadway.
Right. Yes, the board would certainly have to consider the environmental analysis for other transmission mains. This CEQA just includes 2 transmission mains. The 2 included in this document would allow the district to consolidate Phoenix Lake Park and Scenic View treatment facilities. And a segment is needed in order to consolidate Crystal Falls and eventually Cedar Ridge. But you are correct. There are other treatment facilities that would need a transmission main, most notably Ponderosa Hills, and that is not in this environmental document. We thought about including it. Quite honestly, the reason we didn't was shelf life and thinking that, boy, we're probably more than 5 years away from being able to build that transmission line. The other 2 transmission lines that we're talking about have value to the district now. The transmission main to Ponderosa Hills really has no value to the district until Sierra Pines is built. And so we pushed that out. Hopefully I'm answering your question, but absolutely the board will have to weigh in on the environmental analysis of those pipeline segments, and happy in a committee meeting to lay out the maps of the various transmission main networks that we need in order to accomplish full consolidation the way we're proposing. But it's just probably many years into the future.
I totally appreciate that, Eric, because it seems like the devils are in the details. And in my mind, when I look at this and I'm looking at transmission and who's going to pay for this pipe, and typically, in the water world, it's the beneficiary pays. Okay, so then will this be an assessment district where just the people that are paying for this transmission, the pipe transmission, then would be that would increase their bill because they have a transmission. They would be they are the beneficiaries of this.
That would need to be considered by the board. It certainly would. We would try to secure grants because the state is incentivizing consolidation, and a transmission main is a direct relation to consolidating. But yeah, in the absence of that, that's something the board would have to consider if there's a surcharge, if there's an assessment, and if that only goes to those beneficiaries. Sierra Pines itself has such a large pool of beneficiaries, and it's part of the benefit to the whole community. But yeah, those individual transmission mains, and it also depends on what private mutual water companies may connect to those transmission mains as we pass through their little service areas. So it's a pretty detailed analysis, and I would hope we get some cost recovery. But right now, this 3 MGD phase 1 that's included is really just to meet the current demands that the district has. It isn't for growth. However, there's built in some factors of safety in the treatment because you don't want to run the treatment plant at 100% capacity on day 1, but it really isn't designed for growth. It's designed to consolidate our existing facilities.
That's really informative, and I like your idea about having this go to a committee to really understand the environmental impacts and the impacts to the ratepayer on the transmission, because I think currently they're not. Are they paying for the transmission? Are they paying a portion of how the water's being transmitted in that area right now?
We don't currently have a component of like our rate that's associated with transmission or of our capacity fee. We don't really have transmission in this district currently. We have small diameter mains that function as a quasi transmission main, but the pipelines we're talking about as part of this project would be, large diameter. Their goal in life is to get water from the treatment plant to a tank, and then it's distributed out of the tank. So we won't really want people to connect directly to it. It will be under high pressure in many cases, because we're trying to consolidate pumping facilities downstream. So they may be constructed of welded steel or ductile iron and not PVC. There's a lot of details, but absolutely the cost and the cost share will be one of the discussions we'll have to have.
Yeah. Okay. And the environmental analysis of the transmission. Okay.
Yeah, and Eric, I can add just one bit of info. So, and it based on the pipeline replacement, or what needs to be replaced or not, or how it's being replaced and sized, somewhat determines the type of environmental review that would be necessary. So if it was a straight one-to-one replacement on capacity, there may not be a full CEQA document required. It may be able to be done in a categorical exemption. If federal or state funding is involved, that does influence the level of environmental review that may be required. So that's another thing to consider while you're kind of going through and mapping out future transmission pipeline facilities, tank replacements, and such.
Dave, if I might add one thing there, this is Maria Hensel. Just to clarify that under phase 3 in the document, in the project description, construction of off-site distribution systems, though not the subject of this environmental document, are posed, which positions the district well to tier off of this document in the future if need be. Also, to clarify from Barbara's point around growth, this document assumed the level of growth that consistent with the 2018 Tuolumne County General Plan. And we don't know in the future what the level of growth may be, 40 years out. I know I won't be here. However, the fact that that's not known would require additional CEQA in the future. But this document just went with the known, which is the projected level of growth that's already been established by the general plan.
Thank you. Director Ringen.
Thank you. I have a question, and then I have a comment, if I could. I have understood, and it could be inaccurate, because it wasn't me that was able to find this out. I didn't see anything in the document, but that facility, the Sierra Pines Water Treatment Plant, is going to use a fair amount of electricity, and I have been told that the lines out there are undersized. There's not enough power to that site. Has PG&E committed to making sure that there's more than enough power to the site so that it can operate?
Director Ringen, during the preliminary design phase that the district was collaborating with Carollo engineers, that came up, and that was a very big issue. I did call PG&E and sent over our load calculations and a map of the site. And although I have email correspondence to the effect, that's as far as we took it, because unless we were going to pay for an application to be started, PG&E wasn't going to research any further. But the response I did receive back was that they may need to upgrade some line and a few poles, but it wouldn't be very far and wouldn't be terribly expensive. Now, when they say terribly expensive, I assume it won't be more than $150,000, that kind of thing. Because if you go up Middle Camp, there's a substation that you may have seen, like a switching yard substation right there. And they said, we've got the juice, we've got the power. We'd have to do further analysis on, some of the wire, and some of the conditions of the poles. But it doesn't look to be prohibitive or overly difficult.
Okay, well, that's good news, because that really concerned me. I could see some sort of really fly in the ointment on that one if it wasn't properly taken care of. Then my comment is, I really get heartburn when we hear the word recreation proposed. To me, that is code for it ain't gonna happen. Just like what's going on down at Phoenix Lake Restoration. I don't like hearing that. I mean, I think it should be part of what this plan is, because that property has always been used by the community. And I cannot see, I mean, for hiking and just viewing the environment and animals, birds, so on, I just can't imagine that those trails and so on would be locked out, fenced off.
So Ron, was that a question to me, or was that a question to Eric and district staff?
Well, I don't know whether it was a question or it was more like a comment, because we've got a track record. TUD has a track record of running the other direction anytime somebody says recreation component. So,
well, let me see if I can help at least, and then Eric or anybody else want to jump in. So the whole project right now, Ron, is proposed. When the board takes the action and starts and adopts the CEQA document, then you're kind of the next step beyond it's an approved project in terms of CEQA. And that means that you've approved the facilities, you've approved the district to move forward with next phase of design and to apply for additional funding and all these next steps. Once the CEQA document, and you can still change direction. There are off ramps after this, but this really sets you up for the following steps to move forward. And then it's an adopted CEQA document. And it doesn't really actually even approve the project. It adopts the CEQA document so you can move forward on so the district can move forward on other aspects of the project. Like I said, design, engineering, funding, grant applications. What else would it be? Any other next steps? Maria, I think might have a comment to support this.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify also that the CEQA document does recognize recreation as an existing use on the site.
Yep.
And as far as fencing, fencing around the entire site is not proposed. It's specifically not proposed. Only fencing around the facilities that, such as the treatment plant itself, that would need to be secured for public safety. Other than that, it seems clear that the district's intention is to maintain a recreational component on the site, regardless of whether the trails are actually developed beyond what they're already in the existing condition that they already are. But there are trails on the site currently, and that is recognized in the document.
Yeah, and that would not change. I mean, those would be, you know, whenever the district acquires the funding to actually move forward with more developed trails, those other trails that are still there can be maintained, can be used by the public. So we're not changing. There's, you know, they may get impacted by construction, but that's all temporary. So.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'd like to comment on that. I do believe it would be extremely important if this moves forward, that the board move forward with it and plant into the CIP some of those priorities. If recreation is a determined priority and we need to seek funding for that, then that would need to be included, or the board would direct staff to include that, I would imagine, in the CIP, that is a value to the community. I was really pleasantly surprised by all the letters to the for the project that said, hey, sign me up for a trail volunteer, a trail monitor, trail patroller. We love it up here and we'd like to see those trails. And that indicates to me as a director that it would be nice to basically say, yes, this is a value and we're going to seek money to support that. So I think, Director Ringen, it could be up to us for this, how we move forward with this. Perhaps the board would say, oh yeah, we're ready to go to bid, or no, or not. We really want to look at the whole pipe issue. And if that involves federal dollars, what the NEPA would be on the analysis. And so, yeah, we have a lot more steps to go through for sure. But we can direct the direction we go and how fast we go, because as we know, we have a lot of competing number one priorities with that are competing with this. I just wanted to add one more thing, if I may. We all know that using treated water for fire protection is paid for, filtered, drinking quality water, when we are surrounded by raw water right around there. And I just feel, and I'm not the only one that really feels strongly, if there is a way to perhaps fund a dry, what they call a dry hydrant, right there at the hopefully 30 acre raw water reservoir, so that we can have it designed where they can just pump and go, get the water and go, like they have at Twain-Hart Community Services District has one, and the roads are paved, so any of those trucks can just fill up right there, because that is good planning. That's upfront planning. And the more we don't plan like that, I don't want to run out of treated water, because we can blow through that on any kind of fire event real fast, and then we won't have any. That'll drive up our post disaster recovery costs. So the more we can plan some of these things in here for future fire protection, the better, I think.
I see Lisa Murphy has a comment.
Actually, it's a clarification on the timeline, just with what Barbara was saying. So I know that once the CEQA document is approved, we have a 5-year, it's good for 5 years. When does that clock start ticking? Does that clock start ticking when we start writing the CEQA document, or after it's approved?
It's after, it's basically after you've adopted it. Yeah, and it's not a hard and fast 5 years, but that's just sort of a general practice, and it's kind of understood. Cultural resources surveys usually time out at about 2 years within that 5-year window. Since the last ones were done, it's not even from the adoption of the CEQA document. So the CEQA document, so you got about 5 years, because as you can imagine, things can change in 5 years in an environmental setting within a project site. I don't anticipate that to occur here, but you can see that in other, urban and suburban areas.
Yeah, just one more clarification on that. So
sure.
In that 5 years till the the project needs to be completed in those 5 years?
No, it's just, that's the shelf life of the CEQA document. It doesn't say that the project has to be completed within that time. That's the life of the CEQA document. Because of, you figure that there could be regulations change, policy changes, all things that could happen within that 5-year window, but it doesn't change, it doesn't determine when the project will be completed. Does that help?
It does. I'm still just trying to solidify the timeline of what that means for us and how, what part of the project needs to be completed in order for the CEQA document that we don't have to go back in and do.
Well, that doesn't determine when maybe Maria can help me out here. That doesn't determine the CEQA document, and this 5-year sort of window that you have is just the life of the CEQA document itself. Now, and so that gives you the time to design, construct, do everything. It doesn't have to occur within that 5-year timeline. If the project description changed in some way, like let's say, this is all just for example, there was, like you were talking about, adding additional storage within the system to replace some of the storage that's going off. Let's say we're going to go to a 2 million gallon storage tank at the facility. Well, that may actually require an addendum to the CEQA document, but not a new CEQA document itself. So it gives, if I've tried to explain this as best I can, hopefully that helps.
You know, Dave, Director Murphy, maybe tell me if I'm wrong on this, Dave, but the way I think about that 5-year time horizon is that ideally we have secured funding through the state because they review the CEQA, and through the feds, they'll review the NEPA, which is a separate item for the board's consideration here in the future. But I view the 5 years as that's the time frame in which a funding agency would consider the CEQA and or NEPA to be still valid. And once we get our funding, if it's in year 6 or 7 that we start construction, I don't think it would necessarily make the CEQA document need to come back to the board to get updated. But what I do think is that the permitting is a whole nother animal here, and the permits have their own time frame. So it's like, if we master plan this all out, there's probably a critical path here, and it may be the 5 years, it may be something less than that, depending on the permitting strategy that we take, especially as it relates to the Army Corps and all of the changes that have been happening in that regulatory environment related to wetlands.
I'd say also within that is that before construction began, there will be mitigation measures that need to be taken, like the nesting bird surveys, the plant survey, and everything to kind of true it up to the existing condition before construction starts. And that's part of what's laid out in the CEQA document now, and that the state would consider, you know, in this valid time frame. And same with the NEPA for the federal government.
Director Murphy, and I would just like to echo what Eric and Dave had said. The 5-year limit is not a hard and fast deadline during which TUD must acquire all the permits, all the funding, and construct the project. Generally, that 5-year period, and it's generally, is just a guideline, as Eric stated, for permitting agencies to review the document and consider it current. But that could change. You know, that's why it's a guideline. It could change. If a new animal is listed under the ESA, that is a changed circumstance that could require. But that's true with all CEQA documents, are subject to new listings, to regulatory, legal law changes, things of that sort. But, you know, those are always present, and you can never accommodate or predict when those things may occur. But generally, as Eric stated, the 5-year is just a guideline for the permitting agencies to say, yeah, okay, you've got a document and it looks current, we're going to review it. And as long as it's still current, we're going to issue your permit. I hope that helps. The three of us put together, I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful. I really appreciate that.
Barbara, I think you're muted.
Yes, I have a question along those same lines. So the board the motion has a lot in it, and the motion has the CEQA, but it also has the monitoring and those kinds of things that once the project actually got rolling, those are the protocols. If I read the monitoring stuff correctly, would those, let's say the CEQA stays current, let's say we're not doing anything on this for a while, and then when we actually do begin to do something on it, we may have to, the CEQA may still be okay, we're within a 5-year timeline, but those mitigations may need to be, protocols may need to be updated, let's say.
That's probably a fair statement, Barbara. And it may just depend more about, like what Jesse had said, it could be regulatory changes, could be changes, status of species, could be requirements that the feds or the state may put on in addition to based on funding. They may say like, oh, whatever this condition may be based on the funding. Your mitigation monitoring reporting plan is great. We would like to see whatever XYZ and AB3, 1, 2, 3 added to that. It's highly speculative, but it's not outside of the realm of possibilities either. So what you're adopting now as part of that is based on current standards, professional and our professional, and current standards, professional experience, and framed up around the project as proposed.
Thank you. Director Boatright.
Question. Now, once the mitigated negative declarations accepted, approved, the next line is to secure the funding, acquire the permits, and final design. Do all three of those happen simultaneously, or is that we go after funding for final design and then secure ultimate funding and then acquire a permit? Anyway, Eric, if you could line that up.
Director Boatright, I'll try. I guess there isn't just one way to get to the finish line, but the way I think it probably would lay out is this: if the board approved this environmental document, then staff would proceed with submitting a funding application to the funding agencies. ESA is also under contract to finish the NEPA, which is what's necessary to submit our application to USDA. The CEQA is important to the State Water Board for their funding programs. So let's say we submit multiple funding applications. I would ask the board to consider budgeting for the permitting process to begin. The reason is the final design we control. I mean, your consultant, whoever the board selects, we can kind of speed up, slow down. There isn't a lot of unknowns there, but permitting is vastly unknown. And the speed in which the resource agencies move is, who knows? It depends on who you receive reviewing your application at the resource agency. And I believe that our funding application will say, we're in the process of getting permits. We haven't yet. They likely, if they issue an offer of funding, will say it's conditioned on you getting these permits. So we won't actually be able to get funding until we get the permits. The final design is a very expensive engagement. I mean, it may be $1 million plus for this district to fund. That can be after we've secured funding. The board could move before we secure funding in anticipation, like we have with the wastewater project. But I think the next critical path would be the permitting, just because it could take a while. hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Eric, I have a concern, and that is, I don't have enough information. I like this concept, and I like where we're going, but I don't have enough information for our customer base. We are, according to the Department of Finance, we really are sort of on this glide path in a declining way. And so we're not really growing. I'm saying this is a good idea, but I kind of need a better idea before we automatically go into funding and automatically go into permitting and you know, it's a green light. I don't look at this, adopting this as a green light. I look at this really looking at the cost of transmission and really seeing what that will be on the beneficiaries, on the customers. I'm not clear on that. I have no idea what it could end up being. Suddenly we just get this big, you know, I need to stay on top of how much is this really going to cost, especially the transmission part, because we will be pushing a lot of debt forward, not just with this project, but with PG&E acquisition and CVP environmental, if we go forward with that. And so I'm just weighing this in my mind. In a way, it's still looking good, okay? But I've got to look at how this is going to affect all of us, and I don't have that pipe piece. And even though I'm supportive of this, I don't feel good without, you know, going to committee, finance, water, all of them, to make sure that we really understand some of those other costs before it automatically, you guys will be spending a lot of time. I just don't think it should be automatic if we approve this.
I absolutely respect that. I mean, the dollars and cents are actually probably the single biggest issue in proceeding with this project. I mean, the need is pretty obvious, but how are we going to pay for it? And the affordability aspects, and what does that mean and implicate the ratepayer on other areas of our capital program? If I misspoke, I didn't want anyone to think that there was anything automatic here. As far as expending district funds, that's a board discretion, and the budgeting process that the board goes through and the strategic planning process really outlines how staff's going to spend money and time and resources of the district. This environmental document would just complete one step. It wouldn't obligate us to move any farther. If the district wanted to take a pause and see how the financial outlook was for the district in light of these other very large projects that we're talking about, that would be fine. That's, I think, part of why the 5-year discussion here on shelf life and stuff. However, there's been a lot of invested time up to this point under the belief that the district wanted us to submit funding applications. So I would hope, but I would wait on the board's direction to proceed that way. And then there's a lot of waiting after that funding application is submitted. I mean, there's certainly interaction and questioning, but we wouldn't have to get a consultant on board to work on permits at that time. We wouldn't certainly have to start any further engineering design. We wouldn't have to hire a landscape architect to refine the recreation unless the district board wanted to do so. But we would really like to get the environmental done so that we at least are eligible to submit an application for funding. Without this, we really have no project. We have no path forward. We can wait. We can always wait. I mean, shoot, the site's been there for 12. We've been working on this for 12 years, and but we're closer than we ever have been, and it's been the result of the board approving these contracts for the wetland delineation, for the environmental, for the preliminary design, and we just hope the board would consider taking this next step, and then we're happy to go to committee and talk about the transmission main pipelines in more detail, the environmental and the financial costs of those.
Jeff has a comment.
Oh, Jeff. Okay, I didn't see you.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Yeah, I agree, Eric. I mean, this is the logical next step. We need to get past this point and move on. It doesn't mean that we can't go through the transmission issue with fine tooth comb, and we will, I'm sure. And but we need to get this part of it behind us and move on with this project at least for this step anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kearns. Are there any other comments from the board?
Yes, Lisa has her hand up.
Okay.
Very good. This has to do with a comment that I had made in the last session, and I'm just curious how difficult it is to make very small changes in the wording that was used. This specifically having to do with LED lighting. My worry is that once something is written like that, that's then the default of what we use. And what we've seen in the city of Sonora with these LED lighting that they've put in, although it is within the night sky not ordinance, but qualifications, you need blackout curtains to sleep. And that would very much change the aesthetics for folks up in that general area. It's pretty close to houses up there, as well as for wildlife. And so from the environmental perspective and the human health and wildlife health, my preference would be to take just those simple 3 letters out, the LED part out of the agreement. And my question is, how difficult is it to do that?
It's a good question, and I know you brought this up before. I would, this isn't design criteria, so the design and the way that the project would be constructed is actually different. I mean, the LED is suggested. It's just one way that can be accommodated, but it's not the only way. So instead of, I would say one other thing, and I wouldn't suggest opening up the document to do this, but we could, but anyway, it could be added to it, LED or other that are more night sky friendly, something to that effect. But you can write that into the way that the design and the bid package would be done, as opposed to it, because it's not an environmental issue. We've already, we've addressed glare and night and lighting and everything, and those are just ways that these can be accommodated and provided for, but it's not the only way.
Dave, is another way of just piggybacking on this, another way to say there isn't a quantitative threshold or goal for lumens for light pollution. So what we were talking about was like a best management practice, at least we thought was a BMP. But when we get into the design, if we were to substitute LED with another form of lighting, I think Director Murphy's question is, does that invalidate the CEQA or cause any issues there?
No, it's just one, that LED is one form of lighting that can be used, but it's not the only way to do it. And it wouldn't invalidate the document in any way, shape, or form.
Dave, if I may just add, agreeing with what you're saying here, the board is not restricted from making the document stronger by imposing criteria that would be stricter and more protective of the resources in the specifications.
So could we add, could we just add or other light source? I mean, is there, I know you indicated, Dave, opening up the document, but Maria just said we could possibly incorporate something even more into it. Is that what you were referring to, Director Murphy?
I guess my concern is that once documents get solidified, it tends to be the default that you go to. with LED specifically listed in there, and if LED was not listed in there, the default is night sky friendly, right? But with LED, it guides you to using LED. And so that's my concern, is that is just going to end up being what the default is. And I don't think that's the best solution.
If I can jump in here, Dave and Eric and Maria, I'd just like to echo what Maria had said. Any environmental document, especially when the LED lighting was used in an effort, as Eric said, you know, there is no standard of lumens on what constitutes adequate night sky protection. But a district, any CEQA document, you know, after it is adopted, the public agency that has adopted the document can always choose to make a decision that is more protective of the environment without having to go back and redo the document. You can make your impacts less so without having to reopen that document. If you want to make a change and you want to install halogens that point directly into the sky, like the Luxor in Las Vegas, yes, that will require a whole reopening of the document. But in this situation, absolutely not. You know, the district could choose to not put in lights at all, or perhaps motion activated lights, things of that sort, in order to make to be more protective of night sky. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and the concern on this is not just night sky; it's the health for wildlife and for humans that are in the vicinity. And so, and that is why I feel like in the CEQA, it is an environmental factor. But I hear what you're saying. Thank you for the clarification.
Well, thanks, Jesse. Are there any other comments from the board? I'm cycling through fast. Okay, seeing none. Thank you, you guys. That was really great, and it was a really good discussion. I think that it's great that the board is really engaged in wanting to see this be really a good thing for our community. So, Corey, are there any public comments at this time?
Not that oh, actually, hold on just a moment. Yes, somebody did just raise their hand. Sarah.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sarah Husby, and I am the program director at CSERC. CSERC has roughly 4 decades of on-the-ground expertise concerning the Sierra Pine site and the diversity of wildlife use on the property. After review of the project documents, our center provides our support for the advocacy of the environmental review. We support the project being approved. We have listed one concern that we would ask to be addressed. Over the years, Western pond turtles have been present on the upper pond and at times at the lower pond. Mitigation measures Bio1 provides that if turtles are observed, they will be captured and relocated to similar habitat within 10 miles of the project site. CSERC opposes the removal and relocation of Western pond turtles away from the project site to another site. This action would basically eliminate the occupancy of the site by a special status wildlife species, rather than protecting continued occupancy of Western pond turtles on the site into the future. CSERC simply asks that the Western pond turtles discovered on the project site, especially at the upper pond location, be fully protected from project activities by the use of most appropriate mesh fencing or alternative protection measures. If any turtles are judged to be at the risk from the project activities, only then do we urge that they be captured and cared for at a wildlife care facility until they can be relocated back at the site post-construction, either at the upper pond or the new water storage feature, once there has been constructed and the reservoir riparian shoreline vegetation is planted and has become suitable. In summary, we urge that Western pond turtles on the site be retained and protected so that turtles continue to persist at the site after the project has been constructed and is operating. One additional recommendation we provide for overall mitigation for environmental impacts would be that TUD to hire consultants to eradicate invasive bullfrogs that negatively affect native amphibians and other wildlife on the project site. Yosemite Park effectively eradicated bullfrogs in strategic areas in the park and showed how valuable that restoration action can be for native species. CSERC believes that Ensatina salamander and California newt are both present on the project site, and both could benefit from the removal of bullfrogs at both the upper pond and the lower pond storage reservoir site. In closing, I reaffirm that CSERC supports the approval of the regional water treatment facility and the site as proposed. We do ask that at least western pond turtles not be extirpated from the site. This is minor but important request. We even offer to pay for the cost for care at a wildlife facility until they can be relocated back at the site. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I'd like to direct a question then to staff. What about changing that part of the CEQA to allow the species to be in that upper pond, and then you know, even try to relocate them to the lower one when it's built, so that we can provide some habitat. And I actually like the idea of removing the bullfrogs too, because in terms of systems management, they outcompete everything around there. At any rate, what's your opinion of that? I think that is a really valid point, since that is their habitat.
Well,
Would you like me to respond to this?
Please,
Director
Maria.
Bailey? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Just to reiterate, you know, the relocation of western pond turtle is really a management action. It would be, it would have to occur, of course, with the approval of the resource agencies. But I don't believe that the existing document that we have put together would preclude the relocation to the existing ponds that are on site. Because this would be an action that would be more protective of the resource rather than less protective. The way that the document was written and the mitigation in the biological resources section to relocate the western pond turtle off-site is also protective of the resource, in that it would prevent the pond turtles from, you know, being crushed on site potentially. And I don't believe that the existing document needs to be altered to further protect the resource. I think that could occur through management actions in consultation with resource agencies and TUD.
Thank you, Maria. That was very helpful.
Sure.
Any member of the board like to comment on that? Okay. Any other comments from the public? Corey?
Not that I see at this moment, no.
Okay. All right. So I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the board for further discussion or a motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Eric, could we go
Excuse
back
me?
to full Zoom screen for this?
We certainly can. What would you like to see?
Well, no, I mean, just go ahead and stop.
Oh, I'm sorry. Absolutely. I'm sorry.
There we go.
Is that what you were looking for? I apologize.
Yes, thank you.
Here we go. Yeah, because we can't see everybody to see if somebody's got their hand up or something. Yeah.
I forget that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
thank you. And again, oh no, we're just all getting used to Zoom. It's just a Zoom thing. All right. Well, thank you, Dave, again, and Maria. That's great that you were here on hand to answer questions. Totally appreciate you help the board understand what we can do and what would be then outside the scope. So, and thank you too, Jesse, for that. All right.
No,
with
you're
no
welcome
further
very much.
discussion. Okay.
I do have a question on the, just to kind of clarify with Maria. At a later point, it would then get written in to actually protect the western pond turtle or return them to the actual habitat on site. It's another portion as far as in the planning or permitting phase.
I think it would make sense definitely to discuss that in the permitting phase. And, just echoing back on Eric's flow chart here, the way I see it, the CEQA is, it's the central step, it's the action before the board at this time. And there are other actions in the future that the board would consider. I think that is definitely something that would be considered in the permitting phase.
All right, thank you.
So I have one quick question on that, just to clarify. So really, I see several items that could be fine-tuned before any of this went forward, and that would need to be rolled into providing CIP money for that. And the bid language would have to reflect that as well, especially if there's some wildlife mitigation or night sky pollution mitigation or fire flow mitigation. So I do see that the board has an opportunity to influence this project in cultural, that we're sensitive in natural and cultural sensitivity. So I see an opportunity for the board to be engaged and help influence this project.
And President Balin, I just want to make clear, because I understand Director Murphy's concern about LED and the public comment related to western pond turtle. In the end, too, your staff, they have to have enough integrity to carry out and implement what the board's wishes are. So the reason I bring this up is I know that when things get written in, they seem like they're permanent and they're the law and whatnot. But if this were to go into construction or bidding tomorrow, based on just what the board is expressing, if it's a majority opinion, not me, but the project manager below me who's in charge of this project, they would just write that into the bidding documents. They would just make it happen. And it would just be one of those things. In addition to the permitting process, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave and Maria, but there are only going to be more mitigations piled onto this project. This is probably the least number of mitigations you're ever going to see, because once the Army Corps, Fish and Wildlife, State Water Board, USDA, and the other funding agencies get a hold of this, they may very well apply a more restrictive mitigation than what is even being proposed by CSERC. So I just want the board to know that your staff, in the end, they're the boots on the ground that implement these things, and we would implement them. We would be true to what the wishes of the majority of the board are, and it wouldn't have to always be written in. But I also respect that it is nice to have the document reflect specific things. I just want everyone to know that.
Hey, Eric, this is Dave, and I would just to echo, that is absolutely correct. More conditions maybe put on the project through the permitting agencies. I think another way to look at it, so we've got a stormwater pollution prevention plan that's part of the best management practices for water quality controls when the project is under construction. Well, in the CEQA document, we list that would be prepared, and we list certain things that would be included, but it's not everything yet. So it just kind of echoes that, yeah, that's going to be bid and construction specifications specific to the site.
Good. This is really helpful. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Dave. Okay, well, I'm looking for a motion. Yes, Director Ringen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Director Ringen.
Thank you. in order to make sure that we don't have heartburn from some of our board members and some of the public, and as this, we already have 3 big irons in the fire, which we need to we need to be focused on big time. The PG&E acquisition, the wastewater treatment plant, and getting our water contract for New Maloney's water. This project, as much as I am for it, I don't think delaying okaying this document for another month or 2 while we allow it to go through the committees and get this wording exactly the way everybody wants it, and so there's no heartburn at all, then we okay it and start moving forward. So that would be my motion, is to send it to the committees, the appropriate committees, get the wording straightened out in it, and then bring it back to the board for approval. I'm sure that, well, I can only speak for myself, but I am 100% behind this project. This is something the community and TUD has been talking about and is needed for a long time. And I fully support it, but I want to make sure everybody feels really, really good about it as we move into it. So that's my motion, is to move it for review through the committees.
Okay, there's a motion to move this to committee and work on the language, I believe, correct? Okay. Is there a second on that? Okay, without, excuse me?
Excuse me, President Balin. Jesse, I just have a quick question for you. Since this is a public hearing, do we need to close the public hearing before we do the motion?
My recollection is that Barbara closed the hearing about 5 minutes ago. Those were the words I heard from Barbara.
Okay, just double checking. Thank you.
Lisa Murphy, Director Murphy has her hand up.
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to just bring this back to a committee for looking at the language and making sure that the things the board feels should be maybe described a little better is in that. And I'm not clear which committee was requested before we go for a vote.
Yes, point of order there, President Balin. We are going to need to identify which committee. Director Ringen's motion was committees, plural. And I do not know if that was Director Ringen's intent, that it would be referred to all of the committees for discussion, or if it was just, we'll need an amendment of that motion and the second, if there is a second, to clarify which committee or committees, plural, it is referred to.
Okay, well, I understand what you're asking for, and that makes sense. The problem is that I don't know. I didn't mean for it to go to all the committees. I just meant the appropriate committees that would be involved with the items that were brought up as a concern.
Director Murphy.
It seems like the watershed might be the committee it goes to with big issues coming up that had to do with kind of those broader environmental issues. But that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, so that would be the environmental issues, just so I understand. Night sky lights and the Western pond turtle. Is that what I'm, and
fire.
and fire flow? Okay. Now I have a clarifying question. Oh, and then I'll get to you, Director Boatright. Are we going to go to committee regarding the potential cost of the pipeline and have a thorough discussion on that? Are we going to get into that level of committee analysis? I'm just asking. Yes, Director Kearns, I'm sorry, Director Boatright. Let me take Director Boatright because he had his hand up first. I'm sorry, Jeff, and then I'll get you. Okay.
Well, I just have a comment before we go to a vote to send this to committee and lengthen the time frame in which we debate this. I think the board has been given several pathways to move forward with changing the language or enforcing a heavier, stringent requirement on the environmental side, such as the, lighting change and the environmental for the pond turtle, or possibly even looking at the bullfrog mitigation. I think it's important that we as a board would move this forward so that we do not miss any opportunity that will quickly present itself for funding available to infrastructure and improvement. With a new administration on the federal level, I do think some funding opportunities are going to come up very quickly. And if this is not pushed forward, we could possibly miss out on those types of opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boatright. Director Kearns.
Yeah, exactly, David. I couldn't agree with you more on all of those points. And also Eric Johnson has made it perfectly clear to me anyway that we can address all these issues in the future. I see no need to go back to committee and keep prolonging this. I feel strongly that we need to approve this negative deck, move on, get this step behind us, so that we can do exactly the things that David just pointed out there. Also, the question on the funding of the transmission lines, as Eric also spoke and said that we're probably looking a minimum of 5 years out on that. So to discuss that now, in my opinion, would be premature, because whatever figures we came up with would probably not be anywhere near what they were going to be in 5 years, one way or the other. So again, I think we need to pass this thing and get it behind us. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kearns. I too wanted to comment on that, because I appreciate in the past, Director Ringen has been very outspoken about being, feeling like that something we were going to do like recreation, and then it turns out to be discretionary, and there seems to be a lot of discussion that way. But if there's assurances from staff that anything within the confines of the CEQA, that we move forward without any surprises, and that the board has collective influence on the state-of-the-art mitigations that will ensue, that are, critter friendly, et cetera. I just feel, and I'm not speaking for Director Ringen, that when things are just sort of discretionary or et cetera, nobody puts the funding in. And I think that the board is very vigilant now about some of those things. And so the pipeline discussion, I just want to make sure that we're not doing piecemeal. And I respect Director Kearns, willing to want to advance this project, but I don't want to advance it just because, money is being dangled out there. That is not why I want to move forward on this at all. In fact, I wouldn't mind to be what Eric said about putting this on pause so that we can see how much debt we're also going to be moving forward with the regional treatment plant for wastewater treatment, and the huge things that we don't want to lose, that we want to be able to protect staff's time so that we can really advance, figure out how are we going to make, the PG&E thing work. So I think I think this is coming from a good place, at least for me, which is I don't want to just pass this and then it be a green light. I know that the federal government will have money for this within the 5 years. And so it just seems like the board's job now is to balance this project. I disagree, respectfully disagree with Director Boatwright about immediately going after money, because I don't know where we are in terms of how much we're going to be saddling the ratepayer with all these ambitious and very good projects. So I appreciate everybody's concern. I appreciate where Director Ringen has gone in the past about recognizing that there's no funding for things that were very much part of the grant. So with that, is there any other director that would like to weigh in on
we do
this?
have Director Murphy,
yeah,
her hand's up, and then Don also has a comment after that too.
Thank you, Corey.
So this is actually a point of order. And if you go back and look at what the motion was originally, when we talked about having the discussion at this meeting and then the actual vote at a February meeting, I believe was the actual motion that we passed in the past. So I was a little surprised to see that this was coming to a vote in this, because I think that's not in accordance with what we had voted on before. Second thing, I think my interest in having everything very clear in the CEQA is, as you guys all know, board members come and go every 2 years. And that just because I bring up this issue now doesn't mean that anybody will bring it up in the future, correct? So, and same with each of these things, that we all have our own expertise that we come with and our own things we've seen go wrong with other projects, and we bring that insight in. And when we are no longer the watchdog on this, someone else may not have those same concerns, and those things are meant to be clarified in these. If it's an environmental concern, are meant to be clarified in the environmental documents, I believe.
Thank you, Director Ringen. Dawn, before I switch it to you, I would like Jesse to weigh in on Lisa's point of order.
When Director Murphy, I do not recall precisely. I know that the issue was supposed to be brought back to the board. I thought it was January, but I do not have that. I don't know if Ed does or who might have the minutes from that. That was the first meeting in December. It would take me a few minutes to find it. I can do it if the board wants to further discuss this issue.
My recollection is that it was to be deferred to allow additional time for the CEQA review and by each of the board members, and brought back per the previous agenda item. So if somehow that was misunderstood or was not clear, there was no intent to confuse anybody. It was just that staff understood to delay until the last meeting in January to allow further review and then consider adoption of the MND.
I'm pretty sure that I think I'm the one who made the motion, and I think that we picked a date in January and then we picked another date in February, and I'm looking it up on the internet right now to see if I can find that. But I think that we definitely do need to clarify that before moving ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that any board member can come forth with a motion. It can be moved to adopt, it can be moved to not adopt, it can be moved to adopt the CEQA but not adopt the monitoring yet. And I don't know if there was anything that was violated here.
No, it was a timeline for when we were actually going to be voting on it. And so I think we jumped the gun on the timeline. This was supposed to be informational, and then in February we were supposed to actually be doing the voting on it, which would then give us time to do the committee stuff if we wanted. If that is indeed, I'm looking it up right now. We'll see if Jesse finds it first. Or
I think you'll beat me.
I have a modification to the motion. Director Ringen, would you be open to listening to that?
Certainly.
Okay, that I move that we approve the CEQA, and that this go to the various committees then to improve on the CEQA. Would that be acceptable to you?
You speaking to me?
Jesse, point of order.
Go ahead.
We have a motion that has been put out there and seconded. Can that motion actually be amended?
It can with consent of both of the parties, yes.
Thank you.
So Director Murphy, how do you feel about the amended motion that we approve this CEQA and the monitoring, and we go to committee to do our, I'm at a loss for words, to look it over and make our additions and corrections?
You can't pass it and then make corrections. It would just be that we're making requests to staff to do it a certain way. It wouldn't be a correction to the CEQA document, I don't think. Once we pass the CEQA document, it's passed.
Yeah.
Okay. So
if I may.
All righty. So that.
If
go ahead,
President Balin, let me. There seems to be a lot of discussion about this particular item. Let me provide an example of a project and how the CEQA document was ultimately altered numerous times before construction, all with the knowledge, consent, and support of various regulatory agencies. So I had a client who was going to build a fish screen on a river to protect listed species. And in the CEQA document, a variety of, and there were listed fish in this river at all times of the year, different types of aquatic organisms, fish, salamanders, whatever. So the CEQA document had a listed mitigation measure in it. And all of the regulatory agencies reviewed the document and accepted. And then when it came time to actually construct that fish screen, and my clients sought permits to begin the construction, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife came back and said, you know what? On second thought, we don't like your mitigation measure for the protection of the fish, and we want a different mitigation measure. We said, okay, this is fine. You're the permitting agency. We're going to go along with that. And then what happened is the United States Fish and Wildlife took a look at it, and they said, we don't like the California's mitigation measure. We want you to adopt a third. And so ultimately what we ended up having to do, the client ended up having to do was adopt an amalgamation of all of these mitigation measures in order to get the necessary permits adopted. And that's how it really works. That's how this, I am sure this will work as well. This is simply a step to address the western pond turtle, the various other listed species, the salamanders and everything. But once this district seeks the permits, the responsible agencies, the trustee agencies, I should say, being, the United States. If it's a federally listed, you'll have to deal with United States. If it's California listed, it'll just be California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and any other organizations that may have permitting authority over the project. And so the mitigation measures will change, I guarantee. And so it's not necessary. This district could have the most gold-plated EIR or mitigated neg deck. And once we go for a permit, the regulatory agencies will very likely want to change how the species are protected. And it's very common. It's very common. And so I don't want necessarily the board to get too, I understand the desire to address the western pond turtle and be most protective of that species. But ultimately, the permitting agencies are going to have the final say on how that's handled. Or you won't get your permit and nothing will be constructed. Thank you. Go ahead.
I was able to find it and I was correct. So in the regular business on the meeting that we had in December, Director Murphy amends Director Balin's motion to bring this item back before the board at the second regular meeting in January 2020 for the board review and continued discussion, and then for the board consideration and possible approval at the first board meeting in February 2021. So we jumped the gun on the voting. That wasn't what the motion, what we had agreed upon in that meeting back in December.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, President Balin, that does not necessarily, Director Murphy is correct. If that was the motion, this should be just a discussion item. But if there is a majority at this time, the board could still refer to committee, could still postpone it if they wish to the first meeting of February, or they could adopt it.
So we're still within the what we said we would do. We're not delaying it because we said we would be voting on it in the first meeting in February. Is that how we understand it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so then we're back to Director Ringen's motion and Director Murphy's second that this get a review in committee and before it comes back to the board.
May I speak, please?
Yes, John Perkins.
Hello, thank you. This has been an amazing and exciting, somewhat stressful couple of hours here. I didn't have heartburn until about 15 minutes ago. Now I have heartburn. So I would be terribly remiss if I didn't speak up on behalf of dozens of dedicated TUD past and present employees that are very concerned about what we're talking about and what we're going to do with this today. Yes, unfortunately, this district has been subject to many iterations of boards. One such board decided to shelve this critically important project for years out of not having faith in the staff that recommends it. Your staff has been incredibly responsible and has done their due diligence and worked hard to provide you with all the information you need to do this. One might say, you know, what's the harm of shoving this off another 2 months? I don't know what's going to happen in 2 months.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Or 2 weeks for that matter. But I can tell you that every day that we don't have a completed project is another day where you have men and women working very hard to complete their mission to serve a safe, reliable, potable drinking water to all of your customers. It's another time and an opportunity for a storm to come in, and we're going to send men and women out there in harm's way to float snow down those ditches. You're going to send dedicated employees out in the middle of the night in snowstorms to walk into some of those treatment plants to make sure that they're making great water. Again, I hope this doesn't come off disrespectful, but I've sat here for 21 years now. I know in the presentation, it looks like it's only been around for 12 years, but this has been on our mind for a long, long time. I can promise you this is a good project, and we are dedicated. This staff, this management team, and everybody here is dedicated to do exactly what this board would like us to do when it comes to building the treatment plant that you want with all the mitigations that you desire. If you want park and rec in there, get it in there, we'll get it done for you. But I'm going to beg you to not delay this motion any longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate what you're saying, and I honestly do not think that we're doing anything but honoring what we said we were going to do with the procedure. I mean, that was upfront information, and it was brought to our attention, and nobody is questioning the integrity of the project. Director Murphy.
Yeah, just same thing that of what Barb is saying. This is a great project. You guys have done great work on it. But the agreement that we made was we were going to be voting on this in February, and that was approved in that board meeting back in December. And people felt fine about that now. I don't think that has that timeline. At that time, it was even Ed said that having that vote in February wouldn't be a problem. So I'm not sure why we're then rushing it to do that now when we could very easily have it to committee and back to the board meeting that we said we were going to vote on it. And that way we can look at how we are going to write up something to allow the staff to know what our concerns are, that will take care of the fire, the turtle bullfrog, and the lighting issues, so that we're really clear on everything. And I think that we jumped the gun on voting on it this meeting. We weren't supposed to. We were supposed to vote on it in February.
Yes, Director Kearns.
Yeah, I'd like to let Dawn know that I appreciate and I sympathize with you. I do on this, and all of these issues, including the way that the motion was made at the last meeting. All these issues have been cleared up. That these can be, we can make a vote on this today. We can clear up the turtle problem or the turtle issue. We can clear up the LED lighting issue down the road with the committees and take care of this stuff. The other thing too is, as Don pointed out earlier, we have several treatment plants that are extremely old. Doesn't make them bad treatment plants. Makes them, they are producing the water that they were designed to produce. Unfortunately, the regulatory environment has passed those plants up. And at any day, the state of California could decide that they're going to put even more heavier regulations on us on our treated water, which would make the problem even worse as time goes on. So 12 years, I mean, when are we going to do this? I mean, we have approached this from every angle, year after year, and it's time to move on. All we are doing is approving the negative deck. That's all we're doing here. So let's do it and move on. Thank you.
Comment as well?
Yes, Director Boatman.
Thank you for your comments, Don. I do agree that we have some older water treatment plants out there, and our infrastructure needs to, be rehabilitated, replaced as necessary. And, certainly employee, working in extreme conditions, it can be a hazardous environment. And it is not lost on me. It is certainly appreciated, all the dedication that the employees have. With that, I'd like to remind this board that we ourselves need to do our work. We were giving the time frame to go through the CEQA negative declaration back in December. We've had an additional month to go through it. We certainly have a couple more checkpoints that are brought back directly to this board. Funding opportunities. They can be explored, but until this board accepts it, that funding won't come in to move this project forward. A bidding process. The bid is not accepted until this board actually approves and accepts the bid package. And we have the opportunity at both of those to make sure that these checkpoints are met, that the board has set forth that we want to see some changes in the CEQA or wording or engineering. We have the opportunity at the next couple of steps to do that. And I would encourage this board to, take the motion and the second, sideline that and vote to move forward with this negative declaration. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boatwright. I know we're belaboring this, but really it was a procedural, we had a process. We all agreed on the process. The process was for discussion only here. Nobody caught it except Director Murphy. And so what I look at it as is we had every intention, and all the board agreed to it, that we would bring this up for discussion at this time and then vote on it the first meeting in February. So the honoring of the process is what we said we were going to do, and this shouldn't really have come up as a vote this time around. And Jesse, I don't know where we stand on that. This item should have been informational only at this time.
It should have been, and maybe we all just got ahead of ourselves here. Director Ringen made the motion, and then Director Murphy seconded it. If they want to rescind their motion or the second, they're welcome to do so, and then that would pave the way for a new motion. This is just procedural rules of order here. There's nothing. There's nothing unlawful about rescinding an order or amending an order. It's just, for your sake, Barbara, it's nice that everybody keep these things straight, because you're the one who's running the meeting, and you want to make sure you follow who's first and second, and make sure the motion is clear enough for everybody to understand. But it certainly sounds as though that Director Murphy would appreciate additional time, and so I believe that she would like to rescind her second, and if Director Ringen wants to rescind his first, he's welcome to do that, or not, or if somebody else would like to make a different motion. There, the palette is open. Whatever you guys want to do here, just make sure it's very clear for everybody.
Can we restate the motion that I seconded? Because my understanding of it is that it would go to committees, and then we would come back in that February meeting when we were supposed to vote on it and vote on it at that point.
That's my understanding as well. And I think there's a motion and a second on the table, and I can call for a vote. And then if it clears, then we proceed to the next step. Yes, David.
Can I offer something up? Maybe just to consider while you're working through this difficult situation right now. Maybe suggest that the initial study, mitigated neg deck, be adopted at this, but I would say hold on adopting the mitigation monitoring reporting plan, where we can work in specifics on protective of the biological resources, Western pond turtle, and also even work in or a clarifying on the LED on the lighting. And you could put that into a mitigation. We could the board has direction. This is your project. We could say into the lighting, just be very specific about the type of lighting that would occur at the facility, and just so that you've already got that in motion. I would say that the eradication of bullfrogs, that is not an action that the board or that TUD would be taking. That would have to be approved by the resource agency, specifically CDFW, and they would perform their own CEQA document in order to even move that forward. So while you can be supportive of that, it's not a direct action that TUD would be able to take. So
Thank you.
I would offer that up and see if that's a way that we can move this forward, but still give the board discretion to write in the specifics on how construction, protection of species would occur, so we don't have take of western pond turtle. They are sheltered, and then they brought back into the site, and lighting and any other security type things that the board feels like they would really like to have as part of this project, including the recreation facilities, and being able to and have that as a foundation of the project might be a really good way to move this along in a positive way, and still give staff, let them feel like they've made some major accomplishments with this, but also give the board the ability to direct mitigations and resource protection at a February meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Just so I make sure that everybody understands, the motion that or the description of this public hearing is adopting the CEQA, but also adopting the monitoring and the mitigation and the reporting, and that we would leave off this if this was a new motion, let's say.
Yes, that would be what I would suggest. And Mr. Barton, who's nodding his head, that sounds like a good way to go. Yes. Yeah, and absolutely.
Okay, so I will bring it back to Director Ringen and Director Murphy to stand with your first and second, or rescind your first and second, and we entertain a new motion perhaps based on what Dave had suggested.
Okay. I think what Dave suggested makes a lot of sense, and that should take care of the heartburn of those that have brought up the issues that they wanted the wording changed on. So, and would allow us to move forward. And that, like I said, I fully support this project. So, and I want to see it move forward. So, I don't know whether I can amend my motion again or not, but I would be totally in favor of what Dave brought up.
So you would be in favor of rescinding your motion? And now, okay, I think you would be okay with that. And now, Director Murphy, I would like to hear from you on that suggestion and the possibility of you in favor or not in favor of rescinding your motion.
Yeah, I'm fine with rescinding the motion. And just to be clear, question quick for Dave, with that monitoring, mitigation, and reporting portion that we'd be looking at, we can also include the raw water usage for fire?
I don't know, I don't know if I can answer that from a CEQA perspective. It's more of a design and a management, the way that TUD would manage that and allow CAL FIRE or the local fire to actually use that water. So I don't know. I mean, maybe Eric could answer that question, or maybe Don or somebody.
I don't know how it fits in the context of the CEQA. I mean, we're talking about the mitigation, monitoring, reporting program, but we can certainly include a dry barrel hydrant, a draft point at the raw water reservoir. In terms of a design and a construction thing, it's very easy to incorporate that. I don't know how it gets memorialized and codified in the context of CEQA, but definitely that can be done.
So, and I do, so one, I think, Eric, I thought of this as soon as you started speaking about, there is the mitigation measure to develop the fire prevention plan for this project. And so, and because we had suggested language that would include it in the fire prevention plan, that would be added to this. So not only have you got protective, what are they, all the different things for fire protection during construction, after construction, defensible space, but also that the fire hydrant for raw water and for the dry hydrant would be available. I think that's the way to do it.
I think there's sufficient flexibility written into the fire protection mitigation measure to accommodate. I think the wording is to include, but not to be limited to. Therefore, you could include a fire hydrant going forward if you choose to do so.
Right. Same with, like, I hearken back to that SWIP for the stormwater prevention. It's basically shall include, but is not limited to certain things. And the fire prevention plan and any plans like that are part of the construction and operation would be vetted out within as the project moves forward. So thank you.
Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay, so what I hear here is that both first and seconds have been rescinded. And now I'm looking for a motion that we move, that we adopt the mitigated negative deck only at this time. That's how I heard it, right? Okay. Yes, Director Ringen.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I think Jeff Kearns beat you there. Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Just being orderly. Okay, any further discussion? All right, any public comment on that? No, I closed the public comment. Well, all right, so Melissa, let's call for a roll call vote on that.
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
All right. Well, that was certainly a robust discussion. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Eric and Dave and Dawn and who else I can't see on this. And Maria, I know that you had talked about fire flow way back when we had that presentation. And so appreciate all everybody's hard work on this. So thank you, Jesse.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next item.
Madam President, I'd recommend that we do a 12-minute break before we go into the, I believe we're for the operations report coming up next.
All right, that's all right. Let's take what did you say, a 12-minute break?
Yeah, 12-minute break.
12-minute break it is. All right, we'll see everybody back in 12 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jesse and Barbara, this question's for you. How do we avoid this in the future? That we make a motion, create a timeline, and then we jump the timeline. I'm not sure how that happened on this meeting, but we just spent a lot of time on something that we were actually supposed to vote on next meeting.
Well, I agree. Yeah. Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Jesse.
Barbara. No. Barbara, you go ahead.
No, I agree. And it just takes all of us to be really vigilant on making sure we go forward and what we said we were going to go forward with. I agree with you. And it just takes all of us to have a vigilance. It's, for staff to reflect our minutes, then, it's staff's job as well. I'm not pinning anybody on this, but unfortunately then it becomes, off topic, if you will, because nobody has a problem with the project. So, right. Yeah. So to avoid it in the future, it would just be, I would think, all of us being vigilant about making sure that we catch what we say we're going to do and move that forward.
Yeah, I just appreciate it.
Jesse, do you want to weigh in?
In the future, we stuck with the timelines.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't get the agenda until it was already published. And so I didn't do any background research on what was proposed at during the December meeting. When I saw it listed again, I knew it was going to be brought back to the board, and I didn't double check to see. But by the time I got the agenda, it had already been posted, and I thought, maybe a decision had been made internally to put it back on. In the future, I think that Barbara's correct. The best that we can do is just be more vigilant to make sure that when a timeline is agreed upon, that everybody's aware that, we need to follow that timeline. That's all. Just more monitoring. That's all we can really do.
Yeah, Ron.
Isn't that the GM's job?
I thank you, Director Ringen. I think it's everyone's job. I don't think staff's been accustomed to delays and postponements and deferrals. We're busy. It was simply an oversight. But I agree. I think it would be helpful for everyone. If they see something that's mistaken, to please make a phone call. We could have caught it if there was a concern. We could have addressed it right up front. And prior, rather than late in the discussion. So, staff is vigilant, but we don't catch everything 100% of the time. And we welcome any phone calls if anyone has any issues or concerns, so we can address these real time. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's just important. And I think, Ed, it is a big component of part of what the general manager should be doing, is making sure that we're staying in alignment with the timelines that we have selected. And that were official motions. It wasn't like it was an abstract discussion. So just in the future, I would appreciate more vigilance on that.
I just want to
Yes,
add
Director Kearns.
Barbara, too, with all due respect, I think it's the GM and the president that puts the agenda together, correct?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I think it's the GM and the president.
You cut out.
Sorry. I believe it's the GM and the president that puts the agenda together, correct?
That is correct.
So we all missed it.
And I will own my part in not going back and looking at the minutes and not plugging that in. That I just looked at what was on the draft and we went over the draft. So I take full responsibility for not going back and looking at our timeline and honoring what we said we were going to do. Yes, Director Ringen.
So
yeah, Ron.
It's true that the president does have a say in the agenda, what's going to be on it. But once it leaves the president, it goes to the GM, and then it is produced. So I know, having been president myself, how this system works. And Director or President Balin, I don't think you hold any responsibility in this at all.
Well, let's put it this way. Thank you, Director Ringen. The agenda came out on Thursday, and all of us could have double checked that. It's just one of these things. But because it got so far, then it folks got attached to wanting to move this along, rather than if it had just been a process the way we said we would, we wouldn't have had such strong positions. It just was a procedural thing. But at any rate.
And on the agenda, on the agenda, it didn't specify that we were going to be.
Before we get too far off topic and all that, I would like to apologize, because my recollection of the December meeting was to, basically give us another month to review and go over this CEQA document. And I thought it was perfectly legitimate bringing it in for the vote. That's the way I seen it in the timeline. So, yeah, I think I have, some responsibility in not recognizing the full motion and vote that was in December as well.
Okay, thank you, Director Boatwright. So shall we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our staff ops report? Don.
Hey, well, thank you and good afternoon, President Balin and board members. Don Perkins, your operations director, and give you a very brief review of the operations for the month of December. And then I'll open it up for some questions. So on page 4, I just want to make note, again, the collection crews were very successful in meeting the sanitary sewer overflow reduction standard that was set forth for us. So every year we've been able to reduce our sanitary sewer overflows. And I might add, that's not by accident, it's not by luck, it's by hard work and being practicing good best management practices, thinking outside the box, and really attacking these areas where our collection systems were old and decrepit and needed some major repairs or minor repairs. We've spent a lot of time on that area of our infrastructure, and it's proving to be successful. On page 7 and 8, I just wanted to point out those pictures there of our talented ditch crews being able to rebuild the flume out there on the Soldier ditch in such a way as to preserve the culture and historical value of the ditches. Just a nice picture to represent the many talents and skills that the district has. And this really was largely done with the TUD ditch crews by themselves. Over the years, we might have leaned on the construction crews to help us with that, but more and more, Eric and his crews will be able to do that on their own. I'm very proud of the work they're doing there. And then finally on page 10, a couple more pictures, showing you the new Eden Lane pump station. That new modern Eden Lane pump station is going to eventually, in the very near future, few weeks from now, consolidate and eliminate the old Zielinski take on top of the hill that's in very poor condition. And then also showing the TUD crews, again, these are the distribution crews, their handy work there on the new water service line in Sonora with the nice concrete work that they did, and that they are proud of the work, and they have an eye for detail. So with that, I'll open up for any more questions if you might have some.
Thank you, Don. Director Ringen.
Okay, Mr. Perkins, I read your report front to back. As usual, it's awesome. But on page 2, I got a question. I've got a couple questions here. I want to make it really quick because this meeting is just grinding on and on. I get confused with influent and effluent. Influent is what comes into the wastewater treatment plant, and effluent is what goes out, or do I have it backwards?
Nope, you're exactly right. And I think what you're alluding to is that discrepancy between those numbers. And
you know me too well.
Yeah. And over the years, this question has come up many times, and I've seen it reversed. I've seen it as great as this before, and I just can't put my finger on it. David Mr. Boatwright and I have talked at length over this question over the years, and as you can see, we don't have a great answer, but you're right, that is the influent and effluent totals.
So no one knows why there's more going out than what's coming in.
Yeah, so, out there at the treatment plant, I know Mr. Boatwright can chime in and give a more qualified answer here, but we have two different meters. They can have discrepancies on their own, right? We can have water infiltrate the treatment plant that comes in before or after the influent meter and before the effluent meter. We also recirculate water in the treatment plant that can add to this confusing number. So there's many reasons why this number can vary the way it does.
TUD has spent a tremendous amount of time and money on manhole gaskets and things like that to stop the unwanted influent. So it just kind of, that really caught me. I didn't understand that at all. Septic haulers, 189 loads. Is this normal, average? The real estate market right now is red hot. So there's a lot of septic systems being pumped, tested, inspected,
right,
and so on. Is this above normal or?
I think the best way to say this, it's normal. It is outside of the norm if you think about the last 10 years, but the last several years, it's been just this. A steady, slow increase of frequencies of these numbers increasing. So it's
okay. Well, when as long as we're talking about that, I just hope that as we go through the wastewater treatment plant renovation, that we really look at that. I know I've said this several times, but we're not getting any help from Calaveras County and other areas. We need to make sure that our ratepayers are not carrying a load for other areas, and that the treatment plant is not working overtime because of other areas that aren't paying.
Good comment, Ron. And a couple of things is, one is the new treatment plant design will have a very robust septic hauling station, dual systems where 2 trucks can dump at one time, with very much more modern, robust equipment to handle the solids and the trash that we actually get. And then 2, I look forward to in the very near future meeting with the wastewater committee and the finance committee to work on new fees for such activities.
Great. Okay. Also on page 2, it says quartz. Upper zone off for season, lower zone. What? I never knew there were zones. I thought there was quartz. And how does that work? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So this is a feature we added several months ago, maybe a year ago, to sort of give me an idea how much water is used in the reclamation system. The upper zone being the zone leaving the treatment plant and down to quartz, and then the lower zone below quartz. So we have ways to monitor all of the water that's being used out in those zones. And this is a report to me on how much water is being used in those 2 zones. But of course, we're in the outside of the irrigation season, so it's no totals.
Okay, great. So on page 3, HBC flushing. Well water was used rather than treated water. Why does not TUD use ditch water for flushing?
Well,
I mean, we should never use treated water for flushing sewer. That's expensive water. You know that. You were the water superintendent for how many years?
Yeah, I got you. I understand that line of thinking, but when we think about the cost of water, there's more to the cost of operations than just treating water. There's also efficiency times with collecting the water and using the water in an efficient manner. That all adds to the cost of water. But again, this is a topic that offline in a water committee, I'd love to have this conversation because this comes up from time to time. And I'd like to be able to, when you work with this every day, it becomes clear But the reason we used well water in this case was just in reflection. Back then, we hadn't had a lot of precipitation, and where we can save a couple of drops of surface raw water by using close nearby well water, we found a way to do that.
Well, I think that part's commendable, but let's go back to fire water drafting points. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm just saying they would be everywhere. And if you're flushing, you could pull up to a fire water drafting point, fill a truck, and away you go. And that's going to be good usable water that didn't get treated. Is not expensive treated water. All right, I'm going to let that go. Pulled and hauled 7 loads of sludge from the Twain Harte wastewater treatment plant. Oh my God. We are renovating the Sonora wastewater treatment plant. When are we going to take that damn thing offline?
That being the Twain Harte wastewater treatment plant?
Yep. And where are we at with the Twain Harte interceptor line?
Yeah, so not much work has been done since the last report on the Twain Harte interceptor, where our crews are taking segments of that interceptor, dewatering, cleaning, video camera, and inspecting, and giving us a report. So we've done 3 or 4 segments now. There's many segments to go. It's quite an undertaking to do that, and our crews are doing that. Rich and his collection department will be forming another segment or 2 in the near future. But as for the Twain Harte wastewater treatment plant, we have money set aside in this year's capital budget, the current year, to do a study to give us an idea of what we can or should or shouldn't do. We just haven't executed that agreement yet, that study.
You guys have so much on your plate. I don't know how you can keep your eyes on the moving balls. It just, it amazes me. So at any rate, I understand. I
appreciate that, Ron. And we do have a lot going on, and we have a huge responsibility for our ratepayers. And so we take on these challenges as an opportunity to do right by our customers.
So then the last one is page 5, and this kind of made me a little ill. Reservoirs drafted down further than scheduled because of what was supposed to happen in November, or thought was going to happen in November and later, never did. I mean, thank God for the snow that we got and what's coming. I mean, I'm not real happy about it because I'm out shoveling it, but for our water supply, awesome. As long as it doesn't damage anything, taking trees down. But how did that happen? I mean, Glenn Nunley is all over this. This had to have been a PG&E decision. And to me, if it was, there is just one more huge reason why TUD needs to put their eye on the real important ball, and that's acquiring the PG&E infrastructure and water rights, period.
You're right. You said it all, Ron. Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any other board comments? Okay, I just like to second, those were great photos of that rebuild of that flume. That was great. So yeah, please extend a thank you to Eric Hall. Those were terrific photos too. It just made it all look safer to walk on top of even.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good. So good report, Don. Anyone else? Okay, let's see. Is this a motion to accept and file, or are we just informational? Let me see.
Review only.
It's just informational. Okay. Review only. All right, thank you. Well, with that, then I think we need to adjourn this part of, oh wait, we have staff reports. We have other staff reports. Eric, do you have anything you'd like to share before we move on to Ed?
No,
and
I
Abby?
don't. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Abby, do you want to share some staff reports?
Well, I will. One new thing came up this morning. We have been contacted by or working very closely with Tuolumne County Public Health with respect to when vaccines may be available to our sector of water and wastewater employees as essential employees. And so they've indicated they're moving into 1B distribution, which we would be a part of. And so we've distributed a form out to staff with respect to their interest. And so we're moving that ball along with respect to the COVID vaccine. Other than that, we are very busy adhering to our COVID prevention program. And we're just happy to report people are working hard and being able to maintain their productivity with all of the restrictions that they're under. So I want to thank staff for that. Thank you.
Yes. And it's good they've got flexible schedules also. That's good. Thank you, Abby. All right, Steve, have anything to report?
No, it's business as usual. We're busy, our day-to-day stuff. You know, we got end of week, end of month, end of quarter, end of year, all the good stuff that goes with that. And we're working away on it and everything's going fine. But thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Let's see. Ed, do you have anything you would like to share?
Sure, I can bring a couple of things up, I think, for the board's edification. I've been working with President Barbara Balin to really take on this new role of committee. As you know, there's 5. We sent that information multiple times, reminders, and remind everything, their roles and what committees and so on. I've also been working with Melissa to begin scheduling those committees. And what we're finding out is you guys are going to be busy just about every day of every week. So a lot of meetings coming up in the month of February. In fact, there's so many, we're having logistical issues just finding available dates for the board members to be able to participate. But we're working through it, and Melissa will be coordinating with each of the directors for the appropriate committees. But we do, I think first up was the HR and public relations, working through and with Barbara Balin, but we have items coming up for finance, wastewater, and most likely water as well. So you can expect these coming up in the month of February. I think one particular item for Steve is the mid-year budget review. He's doing a yeoman's effort to try to get the mid-year budget presentation done in time so that we can bring it to the finance committee, which it was news for him. So he was ready to go to the second board meeting in February, but we're trying to get that done early enough for the finance committee to hear it first before it goes to the full board. So a lot of work as we consider moving everything through committees and then moving them to the board. So appreciate everyone's patience and working with Melissa to try to coordinate and schedule those. We also are working on scheduling the water availability workshop. It's potentially a hearing or, you know, the recent storms, and the one we're expecting tonight is excellent news. We'll see how that shakes out, but that is Thursday, February 11th, tentatively planned from 10 to noon. We are reaching out for President Balin's direction to Tuolumne County. Well, excuse me. That's the water supply availability workshop. What I was referencing then would be the following Thursday, tentatively planned for Thursday, February 18th, for Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors, City of Sonora, and a tribal chairman and woman. And that would be for the PG&E update, as well as USBR update as well. And we're still waiting to hear back, and we'll solidify those in the near future. And then we're also scheduling the wastewater treatment plant tour for late February. So you'll be a proposed date for that as well. So a lot of coordination of upcoming meetings, tours, and presentations. So appreciate everyone's help.
Thank you, Ed. let's see, okay, so we're on to directors' reports. Let's see. Well, Ron, you're in the upper left-hand corner. Would you like to start with directors' reports?
Certainly. I'll try and make this as quick as possible. The only meeting that I went to was the T-Stan Irwimp Water Advisory Committee meeting. And it was very, very interesting. We had a presentation by a representative from DWR about the new Water Sustainability Atlas. Please don't ask me to explain that. They don't even really quite understand what they're doing, I think, but it'll probably all work out in the end somehow. We also had formation of a committee for the Roundtable of Regions. So we will be represented, our community and Southern Calaveras will be represented there. And we went through the draft work plan for the next coming year, what we were planning on doing as the T-Stan organization, especially the WAC, Water Advisory Committee. And that was being done to formulate it and then send it to the JPA, the T-Stan JPA, which is a governing board, for approval. So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Director Ringen. Director Boatright.
I have no
Anything
report.
to report?
No reports.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Director Kearns.
Yeah, I have no
Anything
reports
to
either.
report this time?
No, the latest YSS meeting I was unable to attend. I had a conflict, but other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Director Murphy.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just touch on counties. The executive board, we've been meeting regularly. John Kingsbury has submitted his retirement resignation letter, which the board accepted. We've also sent, and we have, we're casting the net for an interim, and we've got some fish in the net. I'm not at liberty to divulge anything, but I'm very, very excited about that. It's just been a good working group to also, figure out how to move us forward. So, and we've even got some applications already that interested in the position. So real high caliber of folks. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. And that's all I have to report. So let's see. With that, if there's no other comments for the good of the order, then we will resume the public aspect of this meeting and go into closed session. And I think we're going to need some help from Corey on that.
We're closing.
Director Bailey, we do have to read the closed session item, and I can do that if you would like.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, that's okay. So
did we have another item?
No, we just have to read the closed session item. So we'll recess.
That's it. I got it.
Yes. For closed session for public employee
please read
performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, position general manager.
Thank you for reading that. It's just a little bit hard to scroll back and forth on our electronic agenda. Thank you. Okay. Well, then we will adjourn. The board will adjourn with well, let's see. We'll just all adjourn to the other room, and then we'll decide how we want to meet as a pod or all together.
All right, it'll just be one moment.
Thank you, Corey.
Bye.
Barbara, I was going to sign off. Did you intend for me to be part of the evaluation or participate in any way?
This is, no, we're good, Jesse. Thank you for asking. So we will be, you can sign off. Okay? And thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, we still have folks